Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome back. I want to introduce you to Tom Folan. He's a professional football freestyler. He's a 62-year-old, and this is what veganism does for you. Oh, sorry, no, he's 22 years old. He's been training for the last 10 years, and he trains 6 days a week to maintain his amazing skills. And he's performed in over 20 countries, and Tom's ranked number 2 in the UK. Oh, sorry. I was new. I didn't even realise football freestyling was even a professional activity, and so he's a real ambassador for us across the world. Second place in the Red Bull World Cup in Beijing in 2016, and he's been vegan again another 3 years. Vegan, same as Sam. 3.5. Oh, okay. And he's going to share some of his story with us. So big hand for Tom.
Thank you. Yeah, so first of all, I've just got to say a big thank you to Steve and Louise and all of the team for organising such a great event. And I was actually here at the first Surrey Vegan event in Guildford, which also happened to be the first vegan event I'd ever been to. And to see the growth, to see the size of this venue, how many different types of stalls there are, is really amazing, and I'm blessed to be a part of it. So yeah, I guess Steve's already pretty much introduced me, but yeah, my name is Tom Folan, and I am a professional football freestyler. And before we get started, could I just get a rough consensus as to how many of you have heard of or know what football freestyle is? Just like a little nod of the head or something is fine. Cool, okay. So, football freestyle is essentially, it consists of performing tricks with a ball using all different parts of the body. And it's its own independent sport away from regular football. And the best analogy I could use to describe this is that it's like comparing figure skating and ice hockey. Like with these two sports, they both, the only thing which is similar is the ice skate and the ice which they actually skate on. And with football and freestyle, the only similarity is the ball itself. And we can actually break freestyle down into 3 main categories. Being sit-downs, which relatively self-explanatory, tricks performed whilst in a seated or lying position. Then we have lowers or air moves, which is kind of what I specialise in most. And it's kind of the more technical side of things, and involves like wrapping your leg around the ball as fast as possible, and all that kind of stuff. And then finally, we have uppers. Again, relatively self-explanatory, tricks performed with the upper half of your body. So it could be balancing the ball on your neck, or rolling it around your face, jumping it on your shoulder, and so on. And I would love to be able to give you a live demonstration, but trust me when I say that jumping around like this and then standing up here trying to talk to you whilst I'm gasping for breath and dripping with sweat, probably not the best look in the world. But a little bit of shameless self-promotion. If you do want a better example of exactly what it is that I do, I'll have all the links to my social media and stuff at the end, and Instagram and YouTube is the best place to see what I do. But yeah, now all of that's out the way, I guess the main direction of this talk is to give you a bit of backstory as to how I actually got into freestyle, since it is still such a new and relatively unheard of sport. And then obviously touch on my journey towards veganism and how the freestyle lifestyle and the vegan lifestyle perfectly intertwine with each other. So we might as well start right at the beginning. As well as being virgin or morbidly obese, I was a little bit of a handful as a child. And I was actually born on the 1st of September 1994. And the way that the school system works meant that a lot of my friends started school a year earlier than myself. So almost entirely to get me out of the house, my parents signed me up to football lessons at a local sports centre when I was 3 years old. And I wouldn't say I particularly took to playing football, or that I definitely wouldn't say that I was naturally gifted or anything like that. But because I did start from such a young age, it was pretty much all I knew growing up. And my mum would tell me stories about how she used to take me to the playground, and I wasn't even slightly interested in the swings or the slide or any of that. And the second she turned her back, I would hop the fence and be trying to join in playing football with fully grown men, which got mixed reactions. So yeah, the years went by and I continued to play football. And then around 2005, Nike came out with an ad campaign which they called Jogger Benito, which aside from my less than authentic pronunciation, basically translates to play beautiful. And it was a series of videos which focused on the most skillful players in the world at that time. So naturally, as being football mad, me and my friends were obsessed with these videos. So we'd spend every break time, every lunchtime at school, desperately trying to replicate the things which we'd seen in these videos. But the difference was, whereas their practice stopped as soon as we got back in the classroom, as soon as I got home from school, I was straight out in my school uniform, continuing to dissect and practice these moves. And without trying to get too deep into this, just as skateboarding and gymnastics have their own dictionary of different movements and skills, football freestyle is no different, and we actually have thousands of different trick names and ways to combine these tricks together to create more complex sequences. But one of the most fundamental skills out of all of these is one called around the world, which looks a little bit like this, and as you can see, it basically just involves bringing your leg around the ball in one fluid movement. And so back then, this trick was like my primary goal. It was all I wanted to be able to do. And I remember when I first got this trick consistent, the next day at school, I'm sure my 10-year-old self is probably slightly exaggerating the magnitude of the situation, but it felt like the entire playground was watching as I performed this trick. And really, it was the first time that I remember having that sense of satisfaction from working hard at something, achieving it, and seeing people I care about respond positively to it. And so, unbeknown to me at the time, that moment really sowed the seed for what was to come. So, again, I carried on playing football and signed up to a few Sunday league teams. You can see me like there, very small. And yeah, like I continue to love football, but any parents who have got children that have played Sunday league will know exactly what it's like when you turn up to a muddy pitch at 9 AM on a cold, wet and windy Sunday, November morning, and you look at the opposition and there's just a couple of absolute monsters in the other team. And because I liked using these skills in games, I found myself becoming a real target to defenders, as this picture nicely demonstrates. So yeah, like it got to the point where you could actually hear the parents of these other teams barking instructions at their kids to try and take me out and stop me doing these skills. So I'd come home from the majority of games with so many different bumps and bruises that an accumulation of this just led to me pretty much completely falling out of love with playing football. And it was around this same time that the YouTube boom really happened. And I came across the video of this guy, a guy called Folan from Sweden. And he took the stuff I'd already seen in these Nike adverts to a whole new level. And it was also the first time that I'd seen the words football freestyle attached to what I'd previously just known to be football tricks. And so I became absolutely obsessed trying to find as many different videos of this football freestyle thing as I could. And as my love for freestyle grew, my kind of disenchantment with football began to increase as well. So it wasn't long after this that I made the decision to quit playing regular football and pursue freestyle. And just as a bit of context, back then there were maybe a handful of people worldwide making a living from freestyle. There weren't really any competitions, and effectively there was no future for me with this sport. But honestly, I think it kind of epitomizes one of the biggest lessons we can learn from children, and that's that they always tend to follow their intuition. Like if they see a tree that looks like it needs to be climbed, they'll climb it. Like if they want to balance along the edge of a wall, they'll do it. And so I didn't want to play football anymore. I wanted to be like this guy. I wanted to freestyle. And so that was as simple as that, decision made. And I could honestly talk about freestyle for hours, as you can probably tell. But since I am under time constraints, if you have got any specific questions you would like to ask about freestyle or just anything in regards to this talk in general, then there is going to be a chunk like at the end of Caesar's Q&A to do a Q&A type thing. And alternatively, I'm going to be here pretty much all day, so if you want to come up and have a chat, I'll be more than happy to. But in the 10 years or so since that moment, I've been privileged enough to travel to over 20 different countries to perform and compete I've made some amazing friends and experienced some pretty mental things. But it definitely wasn't all sunshine and rainbows. And throughout school, freestyle kind of acted as like a protective layer for me almost. So I was never really bullied. I used to get exemptions from classes if I had to go and do shows and stuff. And when a lot of my friends were getting into drinking and other extracurricular activities, I was always far too focused on freestyle to get involved in any of that. And so I was always kind of recognised and known as a freestyler, and that was my identity. But when I went to college, I realised that this kind of all changed, and I was surrounded by new people. Teachers didn't really care. I wasn't getting the same exemptions that I used to. And so, as pathetic as it sounds, like, that was kind of hard for me to deal with, because I'd had this, this sort of popularity, this mini fame for the majority of my adult life. And this resulted in me pretty much completely disregarding freestyle and trying my best to get involved in more social circles and friendship groups. And because I completely cut freestyle out of my life, and because it had been such a staple for a number of years at this point, like I said, I kind of lost a sense of who I was and a sense of purpose. And so, another long story short, I eventually decided to drop out of college, much to the unamusement, you could say, of my parents. And this basically meant that whilst they went to work, I spent all day, every day at home for a decent chunk of time. And just as a quick disclaimer, I'm really not the type of person to brandish a whole load of motivational, inspirational quotes on Instagram. But there's one quote I saw during this period, which just said this: if you're lonely when you're alone, you're in bad company. And for some reason, this really resonated with me, and led to me getting more in touch with myself and trying to remember why it is that I started doing this freestyle thing in the first place. And opening my mind in this way and just having a more positive outlook on life in general led to me getting back involved with the freestyle community. And funnily enough, one of my oldest friends and someone who really took me under his wing when I first started freestyle is a guy called Connor McCarthy. You can see next to me there, and you get a scale of how small I was back then as well. Yeah, he happened to be vegetarian at the time. And I realised I'd never asked him why he decided to eat this way. So one day I did, and after a relatively lengthy discussion, I decided that with absolutely zero prior research, I was going to be vegetarian for a week. And I remember I proudly walked down the stairs that evening and just looked at my mum, like, "Mother, Father, I am a vegetarian." And I'm pretty sure that they just thought it was some kind of phase that I was going through, and within a couple of weeks I'll be back to normal. But I stuck with it, and at some point during this week I came across a video from Tim Sheaf called "Why I Stopped Eating Meat." And I'm sure a lot of you probably don't need much of an introduction as to who Tim Sheaf is. And actually his clothing line Ethics, which I'm wearing today, are here in the sort of main hall bit. So if you haven't already, make sure you go check them out and buy bloody loads of stuff. But yeah, it was kind of funny because I was a big fan of Tim since way before any of the vegan stuff. Like back in 2008, 2009, he was just primarily a free runner. And so it was ironic to see this video which he had made about why he stopped eating meat about a year previous, whilst I was in the midst of my voyage towards vegetarianism. And some of the things he said in this video led me to discover the Gary Rofsky speech, which again I'm sure a lot of you have already seen. But then also Earthlings. And I would follow that because it might, depending on how long I talk about this bit, there is some gruesome footage in this trailer if you don't want to look at it. But I had never really been exposed to the conditions that these animals were in. And my ego was so strong at the time that I kind of just saw animals as inferior beings, and I didn't expect any of the footage in this documentary to have any kind of real lasting impact on me. But, like, honestly, the stuff I saw it still haunts me to this day. And you know, it was really after this moment that I decided to make a more conscious and intelligent transition into a plant-based vegan lifestyle. And if anyone sitting in the audience is vegan already, I don't think you necessarily need to see this, but if you're a meat eater, pescatarian, vegetarian, and you're kind of sitting on the fence, I would go as far to say that it is probably, if not, one of, if not the most powerful documentaries that you can watch on the topic. And so that was it, I decided to go vegan. But again, as a bit of context, my diet before this looked a little bit like that. And I'm talking, I was probably one of the fussiest people you're ever going to meet in your entire life. Like, if we went out for a family meal, and the restaurant didn't do burger and chips, steak and chips, chicken and chips, egg and chips, pizza, and maybe spaghetti bolognese if I was feeling particularly adventurous, we could not eat there. I never finished the meals that my mum cooked for me. I didn't like fruit, I barely ate vegetables, and most shockingly of all, like 3.5 years ago, I never tried an avocado. So it's really easy for me to stand up here and preach about the benefits of a vegan diet, and as an athlete especially, about the improved recovery time and how I feel like I can train harder for longer. And although all of these things are true, I would say that the number one difference I noticed is just a drastically improved relationship with food. And I truly believe that is one of the ultimate first world problems these days, that we have such an overabundance of food, yet we've made it so difficult to just eat intuitively. And so, by becoming more connected to what I was eating and preparing my own meals and experimenting with different plant-based ingredients to see which ones sort of affected my body in a positive way, I really just felt a lot more connected to the food that I was eating. And I really think that the benefits, the mental and physical benefits that can be felt by simply becoming more conscious of the food which you choose to fuel your body with is massively underrated. And so that's not even, mentioning the fact that by choosing to avoid animal products, you automatically avoid that negative energy that comes attached to the flesh of an animal which has lived its entire life in pain and suffering. And one of the biggest similarities that I've noticed between freestyle and veganism is that it's all too easy to only see the final product. Like, if you go on my YouTube or my Instagram, all you're going to see is my best stuff. You're not going to see the 10 years of practice which led to that point, or the thousands of times I've failed in order to try and film a clip which I see as worthy to be posted on the internet. And I think the same could be said for veganism. And one of the best examples of this is a guy called Rich Roll. And on the surface, he's a plant-based ultra-endurance athlete who at 50 years old is in unbelievable shape. But from reading his book, Finding Ultra, which is effectively his life story, you realise that at 31 years old, he was a desperately unhealthy alcoholic with a series of criminal offences related to drink driving. And so, I think it's really important for us to realise that this whole thing takes a long journey, and once you start socialising with more like-minded people and getting involved in the vegan community, it can be very hard for passionate, ethical vegans to react in any other way than anger towards people who continue to consume meat and animal products, especially if those people happen to be friends, family, or loved ones. And I think, to conclude, my main goal going forward is to use the platform that I've built through Freestyle to promote the vegan lifestyle for exactly what it is, which, in my opinion, is one of the most important groups of people alive today. Because as humans, we all naturally crave some kind of community, whether that's through supporting the same specific football club or going to bingo on a Tuesday evening. Like, we all want to feel part of something. So really, what could be better than a community of people that have made a conscious decision to no longer support an industry responsible for the death of 56 billion animals every single year. And it happens to not just be better for the pigs and the cows and the chicken and the fish and all of the other animals which society has told us is morally and socially acceptable to eat. But from everything I've read up until this point and everything I've watched, I truly believe that a whole foods, plant-based diet can be optimal for us as humans, and also for the longevity and health of the very planet which we call home. And so yeah, that's pretty much me, that's who I am, that's what I'm trying to do. And if anyone has got any questions, then I'll be more than happy to answer them now. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Tom. In fact, Rich Roll was my inspiration. I read his book and I switched overnight. He's an incredible guy. He's got an amazing podcast as well.
Yeah,
he's an incredible ambassador for the community. So, anybody got any questions for Tom?
Tom, are there many vegetarian footballers?
Unfortunately, no. Like, I would love to be able to say that there are, but there is actually a club which I believe are in League One, so they're not at the highest tier, but they're called Forest Green Rovers. Yeah, you might have heard of them, and they're yeah, somewhere around that general area, I think. And I don't think all the players are vegetarian, but they declare themselves vegetarian as a club. So when you go to watch one of their games, you don't have the kebab fans and the burger fans. It's all it's all vegan food. Yeah, but I think Jason Roberts is a vegetarian, but he doesn't play anymore. And I think the main reason why there aren't more vegetarian or vegan footballers is just because their lives are pretty much controlled. And that's one of the things which I noticed from sort of beginning to get more involved with football in a serious way at a younger age. You realise that unless you know someone who knows someone, you're very unlikely to make it. And those who do make it, pretty much all of their decisions are made for them. Like, they know they have to be at training at a specific time, they eat all of their meals on the same sort of location where they train. And so it's not as if they're getting the opportunity to watch things like Earthlings, and I might, give this vegan thing a try. Like, they're really controlled in that way, I feel, which is a shame. I hope it can change in the future, but we just have to see what happens.
I heard an incredible statistic. There's a guy in the American football, the NFL, a guy called, he calls himself the 300-pound
Yeah.
And I heard he was on Rich Roll podcast, and he said the life expectancy for a professional NFL player is something like mid-50s. It's really ridiculously low.
A lot of that's to do with CTE and head trauma and stuff.
Yeah, I'm sure. No, I'm sure it is that. But he said it's incredible the rubbish that they eat and they continue to eat. And, but he's doing his bit. I think he's still playing now, but he's coming to the end of his career now, isn't he?
Yeah, he's another amazing guy who I'd recommend following on Instagram and stuff if you don't already. He shares a lot of cool stuff.
What's his name?
300-pound vegan David Carter, I think. Yeah.
Hey.
Hey.
We know each other, but anyways. So my question is, like, I know I met you last year because of your following here, and you have a big following on YouTube and Instagram, and you mentioned that you're kind of, when you post vegan things, you get backlash. So how would you think it's a good way to use your already existing following and direct them to veganism without getting like people running away from it?
Yeah, so to clarify, by backlash, I don't get like any hate comments and stuff like that, but if I post a picture of some pancakes, which I'm very proud of, I'll lose like maybe 200 followers just instantly like that. But I think there's many different approaches to vegan activism, like you spoke about at your speech last time. And so I try to focus on the people who actually show an interest of the lifestyle to me. So if I lose 200 followers who unfollow me purely because I'm vegan or purely because I post a picture of some pancakes, then I don't really care about them anyway. Like, they can go and do their thing, and when they're ready to open their minds to all of this stuff, then they can come back to me and I'll welcome them with open arms. But honestly, like, when I was sort of building my name as a freestyler, if you like, I'd get quite a few messages from people saying that maybe they saw my videos and that made them start freestyle. And that was always one of my biggest, one of the things I was most proud of. But now I'm starting to get that with people saying, I've seen you're vegan and I've got lots of questions about it, could you help me out, blah, blah, blah. And the vast majority of the time, these are really young kids, like 12, 13 years old. And when I went vegan, I was the only vegan freestyler out of the entire community. And this is a community of tens of thousands of people today. But now, like even in the UK alone, we've got, I think, about 10 vegan freestylers and a lot more who are vegetarian. And just because when we have these meetups and stuff, I'll always try and take them somewhere like to a vegan or vegetarian restaurant afterwards. And so I think that's the best way for me to use the platform I've got to promote veganism, just to keep doing exactly what I'm doing, but show that I can still be at the top level and do all of this stuff whilst eating this way.
Did you ever have like coaches or trainers tell you not to eat this way? Did anyone say no, don't?
No, like I was really lucky in that sense. Like my parents were super supportive of me. Like they, I would have given them, you know, every right to sort of stop believing in me when I quit playing football, which had been part of my life for so long. Then I effectively quit freestyle for a little while whilst I was at college, and then I quit college as well. So, you know, they had every right to sort of drop me for that, but they supported me the whole way, and although they might not have really understood veganism, they never criticised it and said, no, you have to eat this. And in a kind of roundabout way, it was sort of good that I didn't have many friends when I went vegan, because I didn't have anyone judging me for the decisions that I was making. So no, I've never had anyone telling me that I can't eat this way. And like when I do get backlash from anyone, there 9 times out of 10 it will be people within the freestyle community who just sort of make the sly digs that you know we're all used to dealing with. But I just try and let like my skills do the talking, if you like, and show that, you know, I'm still improving after 10 years of doing this, and you know, I'm improving faster than I ever did before. So yeah.
Any other questions?
Yeah, I've got a quick question. So I don't need the microphone, mate. It's yeah, I'm just interested to know, like, with your diet, is there anything that you find that's better for you to eat when you're doing like exercise and stuff like that? Is there better foods that you find help you to exercise and to repair afterwards, or
yeah, definitely.
Like that?
So I try not to. Well, I don't specifically follow like 80-10-10 diet or like a purely raw food diet or anything like that, but I try and do this thing kind of similar, which I actually heard Tim Shee talk about, called like raw till training. So I'll usually train around midday, like maybe 12 to 1 in the afternoon, and before this I'll only eat raw foods, which usually consists of a green smoothie with, if I go back a few slides, like that green smoothie there is pretty much like a staple for me for breakfast. And a lot of people sort of feel like they have to eat a lot more before they train, but I realised that if I just have this, it might not be particularly calorie dense, but like I feel so empowered and energised by drinking it, and by not consuming something heavier like oats or pasta, I feel much lighter, and just, you know, it digests so much faster as well, so it doesn't feel like it's sitting heavy whilst I'm trying to jump about. So that helps a lot before training, and then afterwards I like to have like a bigger cooked meal, you know, like black beans, avocado, rice, pasta, sweet potato, all of that sort of stuff. Just try and keep it as natural and close to the source as possible.
And then that's your lunch meal, is it? And then for evening meal you have a smaller meal, or is that, how does that work?
To be honest, I don't. Like, I try and eat as infrequently as possible in a way, because I mean, this is a whole lot of talk in itself, but I think that if you're constantly eating throughout the day, your body is using so much energy to try and digest this food that you're constantly giving it, that it doesn't have a chance to actually digest what you've eaten. And so I found that if I eat a lot during the day, I actually feel more tired, and when I'm training I feel like a lot more aches and pains than if I essentially do a form of intermittent fasting, I guess, and just have like one big meal a day. And I don't mean like a gargantuan meal, but just, you know, yeah.
No, I get it. Right, no, thanks, man.
No worries. Cool.
So just going back to the pancake comment.
Yeah, sure.
What did you put in pancakes?
I'm glad you asked. Okay, so they are unbelievably easy to make. All you need is one ripe banana. It depends on what sort of quantities you want to make, but I'll usually use one ripe banana, about 150 grams of oats, and then your favourite milk replacement, almond milk, soy milk, whatever. And then literally, you get it, stick it in a blender, whiz it up until it's like a batter consistency, nice and runny, and then just pour it into a preheated pan, and within a couple of minutes you've got banana pancakes. So it's 3 ingredients. I don't use oil usually, and so yeah, and I recommend trying them because they taste really bloody good.
Any other questions for Tom?
I'll just do one more. What football team do you support?
I'm a Chelsea fan. Who do you support? Who do you support?
No, I don't know. I was just seeing if there's any football fans and they get their fans.
Okay, cool.
Tom, thank you so much for that. Can we have a round of applause for Tom? What I meant to say is both Caesar and Tom, you're going to be around towards the end of the day. We're going to have a kind of a Q&A up here around 4:30, so do join us for that. The other thing as well, we're raising money today. Our chosen charity is the Tower Hills Animal Sanctuary, which is the sanctuary that's run by Fiona Oakes. I don't know if you've heard of Fiona Oakes. She's an incredible vegan athlete. She's just recently finished the Marathon des Sables, which is the hardest foot race in the world. She's done it a 3rd time, and there's a film of her life being brought out, I think, later this year. So she runs the sanctuary. Unfortunately, she couldn't be here to speak in person, but I know she sends everybody the best wishes, and there's collecting teams at the back if you want to donate. I'm sure she'll very much appreciate it. So we're going to have a bit of a break now. We're going to start the game with vegan geezer, Martin Menahan, around 1:30, at 25 minutes time. Thanks very much.